All right, this is Patrick Rogers, and today we have the privilege to have Mel Torrie on the show. And Mel is the CEO and founder of Autonomous Solutions Incorporated. Welcome to the show, Mel.
Great to be here. Thanks, Patrick.
You bet, man. So a little bit about Mel. Mel lives in Mendon, Utah with his wife and two children. He founded ASI in 2000 and built ASI into what it is today with over 200 employees, likely another 100 coming on board within a year or so, 100% bootstrapped. Okay. And so if you're a CEO out there, you know what that means. Which is a feat given the asset heavy industry and the contract size he's dealing with. Mel got his master's in electrical engineering from Utah State University. He's the chairman of the board for Good Times School of Rock and Jazz and also for the Wayne Julian Foundation. So again, Mel, great to have you on the show. Before we dive into ASI and your journey there, what's one interesting fact that not many people know about you?
I would say just a basketball fanatic. I wake up at 4:20 in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and dribble around garbage cans by myself, and then go play with some young guys an hour later. So just insane about reaching the dream of keeping my basketball career up and coming.
Okay, awesome. So did you play in high school, college?
Yeah, I played in high school, but that doesn't say a ton because the high school had 37 kids in it. But there was a farm college that sent me a letter and asked me to come play at their college, but it was in the middle of nowhere in Canada, and I chose not to take that. But yeah, just love it and played it ever since, and been a wonderful thing to keep me in shape. So.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our mine's elk hunting. So basketball, wow. That's phenomenal. So you get up at 4:20 every morning and you're out there practicing your skills, like seriously. And then you go and you play with wherever in town with a group of folks at the school.
An hour later and play with the young
impressive.
Guys. It could be considered insane or unstable, but yeah, I love it. So
very cool, man. Good. So are you also like a fanatic about like following basketball and March Madness and all that kind of stuff?
I would say more the Jazz. That for me, the college changed so often that it was hard to build up that familiarity with the players and get to know them. And so Utah Jazz is really what I follow and get to know. You get a feel for that culture as it's shifting, as they're not changing a ton of players every year. So that's more where I spend the time, but love to watch good college game too. So.
Very cool, man. So tell us a little bit about ASI and what you guys do.
We are an industrial robotic company that focuses on the vehicle side, ground vehicles. And the mission is really helping those farmers, miners, construction, logistics optimize their production system. So how do you move ore out of a mine optimally and get that iron ore from start to port as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible for grain, getting that out of the field as minimally invasive to the ground, to the environment, and as fast as possible for the lowest cost, and across all of those different markets we're in.
So autonomous then. So these are vehicles that are run via remote control then? There's no people inside of them?
Yeah, so a little more than that, more with the AI and autonomy so that they're largely thinking for themselves. So there's no remote control element. Only if they get in trouble, you take over with a joystick, perhaps to go over a public road or something. But right now, for example, in Australia, they're running the autonomous mine from 800 miles away, and the truck drivers have been retrained to operate our software to handle exceptions and just give the equipment new goals as they perhaps clean out this area of the mine and move to a new area. And they kind of do that high level orchestration, but the robots are doing their best to optimize their paths and optimize the flow, slowing down vehicles that are unloaded, optimizing the path for the loaded vehicles.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So this is pretty niche, right? I mean, AI, autonomously driven vehicles for large industrial, commercial locations. How did you get into this, man?
Well, I wrote a paper in college about a Department of Energy robotics program
Uh-huh.
that I was helping with. And John Deere saw that and said, hey, we really want to get into robotic farming. Our customers are asking for it. And this was 25, 26 years ago. And so we agreed. We did 2 years of development with them. And they said, hey, we want to go to product. Will you, if you started a company, we would choose you as our supplier and developer. And so I spun out, took two
Wow.
professors, 4 students, and we started developing it. And within a year, it was canceled. Uh,
I,
concerns about safety derailed that product
yeah.
launch,
Uh-huh. Okay. I
but
love how you said that. Within a year, it was canceled.
yeah. And right now they are barely getting that product to come out with the exact same feature set we were showing the farmers 24 years ago.
Wow.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
it's a little crazy. We chose a little early,
Uh-huh.
but evolved from there. We said, hey, Deere, if you could send us a free golf course mower, we will automate golf course mowing. And so we did that with them. And then construction equipment, autonomous backhoes, and the safety has really been the concern. They're self-insured.
Mm.
Farmers disable safety systems all the time and hurt
Hmm.
themselves and
Hmm.
get a settlement out of court just to not tarnish the brand. And so all of these OEMs that we've partnered with over the years, and we've partnered with the majority of the largest in the world, have just been concerned about that kind of liability exposure when it's
Yeah.
an unstructured environments like farms where there are kids around. How can you safely go out there and solve this dire labor shortage problem?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So this is solving a huge labor shortage problem, and it's creating productivity. Well, I mean, most places are already probably 24/7, but now you don't have just aside with the shortage. Now you don't have scheduling issues. You don't have the human element of emotion and all these other things that go along with having people. Um, how else does your solution help these companies benefit?
I think it's a little bit different for each, but there's the labor shortage is huge.
Yeah.
It's neat that our partners have committed, we won't lay off, we will just retrain. And so, for example, our partner in Australia, the largest autonomous truck deployment in the world that we're doing, they are retraining everyone. And so they have
Yeah.
the people now operating from the software interface.
Got
And
it.
so it's just a great story that way. And now they're doing something with their minds. I
Right.
had a friend looking at getting a mining truck driver job. And one of the employees at a mining company here in the US said, I want you to pick a stall in Walmart, and then I want you to go home, park in your garage,
Uh-huh.
then go back to that stall and do
Uh-huh.
that 12 hours, and
Yeah.
then come and tell me if you still
Yeah.
want the job.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
so rough on that mind numbing challenge.
That's
So,
true.
so that's it. And then optimization. So the criteria for us to win that largest program in the world was you've got to beat human performance by this. And
Mm.
so we had
Okay.
to exceed in efficiencies and safety.
Right.
So these trucks can run over your house, or run over your pickup truck without even noticing that they have. And so safety is just a dire challenge in these industries. People are killed every year in mining, construction, and ag and logistics. And so that's a big one where we have this full coverage of sensors around the
Yeah.
vehicles.
Right.
We're aware of where all the people are, where all of the vehicles are, and so we can orchestrate them safely working amongst themselves.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that makes sense, right? Because you're removing the human element of whatever. They could be tired or poor decisions, and you're bringing that in, and you're seeing an increase in safety and production for the clients, which is significant. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. One mine saw that they were losing 16 million a year because the drivers at the end of their shifts were dropping speeds of 3 to 4 miles an hour. And so
Wow.
we can just keep that consistency.
Right.
That was a gold mining company,
Uh-huh.
but easily pays for the system just in the consistency of operation.
That's amazing. Yeah, fantastic fact there. So Mel, you know, being able to scale this thing and get where you've been able to do it bootstrapped. You had said that there was a few near death experiences the company as you kind of went through. You know, tell us a little bit about this journey.
What a journey. I think it really started with John Deere, and John Deere in a restaurant, a manager sat down with me and showed me the innovator's dilemma
Yeah.
principles and said that's really what we need to have to really innovate and lead the industry. And so I used that. I created a slide out of it in a slide deck, and that's really how we've raised two to 300 million, is just sharing that slide with these big OEMs and sharing how we can be a key partner in the innovation side as they struggle with incremental improvements on the current products that they're trying to sell, as they're challenged with quarterly earnings, and just the brutal public operation that you have to have with that kind of oversight. It's brutal, and we've seen it firsthand because we've partnered with all the billion-dollar companies in that industry, and it's hard to innovate in those environments. And so that was the pitch, and it resonated with people. And so we've worked with the largest to help them develop technology. And then the challenge is just when there are those massive downturns in the economy where you really had no control.
Right.
It was a challenge and frustrating when you read all the books and you follow all the recipes of business operational best practices, and then completely out of your control, everything just crumbles. And that's what happened in 2010. Was, I mean, the 2000 end of 8 through 10 was just brutal in my choice of markets because all of them dropped. And so it's really some government research, small business there, and a little bit of trickle from some others that kept us alive. But yeah, it was tough. And I think the 2009-10 one was the most brutal, and we had to lay off in that one. And also rough because my CFO was packing up his stuff on his last day and passed my son on his way to his death. And that was a rough day for him. He'd been bullied. He suffered from depression and needed to take the car and just get away, and died in a police chase a couple hours later. And so that CFO had seen him and asked my wife if everything was okay. And then we had to use his life insurance and the car insurance of the destroyed car to keep the company afloat and make payroll. And
wow.
Yeah, I was on a plane to go try to sell a bulldozer to the world's largest gold mining company, and stopped in the airport in Denver, turned around and tried to get back, and they shut down the airport for a snowstorm and the highways for a snowstorm. And so I got to listen to his last heartbeats on the road in a snowstorm in Wyoming. And so that journey, just moving through of, we're losing our oldest son, and it looks like we're going to lose the company. So that was a formative time that really changed how we thought and approached challenges and
I bet
perceived negative events.
Man, I can imagine going through a similar situation. You know, that's, what do they say? Two significant losses in a short period of time can sometimes send people to do very, very dramatic things. Not only did you go through two, you know, a personal loss and a business loss, but you came out of it strong. You were able to weather that. I mean, for myself, I went through a time when it was 6 months of divorce, and you know, X was cheating on me, all that stuff. I had a franchise and I couldn't function. I ended
No.
up having to shut the whole franchise down. So how you were able, I'm very impressed at how you were able to manage that and come through as strong as you have. Kudos to you, man.
Oh, thanks. I mean, definitely our faith helped us. We definitely believe God lifted us and lifted
Yeah.
burdens. And then there was a formative story I read about a guy who had cystic fibrosis and had struggled his whole life, and his body's shutting down and his mind is just fine. And he had a dream after a surgery that he saw a classroom where they were learning about what you need to learn in this life,
Mm.
and that there was a fast track called cystic fibrosis. And he saw himself in the back of the classroom volunteer for that disease. And
Wow.
what was so neat is that the perspective that changes if you believe that you chose it, and that it's like weightlifting that you do so you can play basketball,
Uh-huh.
that there's an ownership element. And Stephen Covey talked about, until you can deeply and honestly say, I am what I am because of my choices,
Mm.
I cannot choose otherwise.
Mm.
And so if you truly want that ability to determine your future, then there's an ownership element that is vital. And I don't think he meant it to the extreme of believing you chose everything. I chose my
Sure.
cancer. I chose a wife that would divorce me. I chose those kinds of things. But it changed everything for me to go to that mindset as the optimal way to respond to challenges. And so even if I'm in a traffic jam, okay, why would I have chosen this and how can I respond so I'm glad this traffic jam happened?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you can, I'm going to call my daughter I haven't talked to in 3 weeks. I can listen to an audiobook that would give me the idea that would take my business to the next level. Those kinds of perspectives, and it just changes everything. So when you're in the company and the mining truck starts getting squirrely in a snowstorm
Mm.
and slams into a wall, that didn't happen, but that you
Of
can,
course not.
I mean, there are plenty of things happen, like it does get
Yeah.
greasy and the trucks slide
Yeah.
up the
Yeah.
road and
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
but now I can respond in a way that helps me make the company better, instead of firing the guy, you stupid idiot who wrote that line of code that didn't work, and
Mm.
really get upset and down. No, this is part of the weightlifting and the muscle ripping that will build our muscles for a greater company.
Yeah.
And let's respond in a way so we're glad that happened. We're going to make our company robust in the code we write so that it never leaves the road, or across all of our markets. So the lawnmower doesn't leave the road, neither does the construction vehicles. So that mindset has just been incredible. And so
Mm.
with my son, how can I respond so that when I see him again, we can high five that it happened?
Yeah.
That, how many millions of people does Mel need to help before to write a book about how to respond positively? That's my quest, is how can I make it so that I can look back and be happy that it happened.
Man, I love that thought process, and it's so true. It's the law of duality, right? Things that happen in our lives, we may perceive them as a negative, but mm, but there's the law of duality is something that is negative doesn't happen without some kind of a positive that goes along with it. It's just we have to understand what's going on, reframe, look at it from a different angle, and understand, hey, that negative thing that happened, well, it put some kind of a filter up for us at that time and protected us from something in the future. And it served its purpose at that time. But what was the other good that came out of it? And so I love that that approach, man.
I think just the general principle of resistance is how we gain strength, right? And
Mm,
so whatever resistance we have,
yeah,
whether you're lifting weights, whether you're trying to build a business,
sure.
that's how we grow. And so to tell Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan you can't have the key to the weight room is silly. And for us to say we don't want to go to the weight room to make our businesses better is very counterproductive. We just have to respond in ways, lift those weights in ways that we're not destroying our body. We're just we're
Mm,
responding in ways that our muscles are growing instead of destroying our joints and things like that by responding in an improper way.
yeah. Love that, man. And that leads me into, our next topic that we're going to talk about is, as I asked you before, like, what are you most proud of as a CEO? And you said it's your culture and your people. Tell us more about your culture, and how did you build that culture? How were you intentional about that in your company?
Good question. I think in general, you want to make it a place you want to work. And so that general principle, and it became our vision statement of make it a place you'd want to work even when you financially don't have to.
Mm,
And so that bar is set so that when you're interacting with each other, someone messes up with your order in purchasing and you go to them to address that. Can you do it in a way so that that person would still come to work tomorrow if they were millionaires? And that's really the guiding principle to all of our interactions and the values that we've established that support that kind of a journey. And I would say the biggest transition was probably 2016. I think that's when it was, when the Steve Jobs biography came out.
yeah.
And I got pretty sad because he was pretty caustic with his engineers that could tell them their babies were ugly and don't come back to work unless you fix that baby or you're fired.
Yeah.
And I needed to do what he did, which was simplify these robotic solutions so that a truck driver could control a fleet of vehicles that are moving $8 billion worth of iron ore a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't break, and it's got to be simple to operate, simple to operate and set up and troubleshoot, and just simple. And so I got fairly depressed about that, but then that journey transitioned as I thought of, I mean, it was quite a journey, probably 6 months, a year of just how do I, and with my personality, who was an engineer, who really isn't good at telling engineers that babies are ugly, get to this place of
Uh-huh.
a simple solution that can scale.
Right.
And a couple of things, I think Abraham Lincoln's quote that if you'd win a man to your cause, convince him you're his sincere friend. I'm like, hey, I can do that.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
can't
Makes
tell him you're
sense.
a stupid idiot, but I can sure tell him, hey, I'm on your side, man. I think you can do this. And the other was, if people came to me and said, hey, how can I make my baby prettier? I can work with that person. And so that humility was what I finally resonated with, that if I could build a culture where all of us were humble, where
Mm.
me as a CEO was asking for input and choosing the best idea possible, listening to everyone in the room if they were bringing their ideas in humble ways, and hey, everybody, help me. It's a safe place. There's no derogatory and judgmental kinds of language in the room. We can get the best possible solution in the world. So
Mm.
I changed everything at that point, started anonymous surveys with all my leaders around that value as the core. And then all the other values are possible through that value of humility. So if you want safety, if you really want a safe culture and
Mm-hmm.
someone's up on a
Yeah.
ladder that's got 3 legs, if you're humble going and talking to them, they're going to listen to you and destroy the ladder. If you're up on that ladder and you're the CEO and someone dares to come tell you to get off that unsafe ladder, and how dare you talk to me, I'm the CEO, I'll be on whatever ladder I want to, you just don't get safe. And so the same with simplicity. You don't get simple unless you've listened to your customers, to the people around you, to optimize for simple. So our values all build around humble as the foundation. And so we hire for it, we measure it, we reward it, we don't tolerate a lack of it.
Mm. Wow. Um, so culture of humility as the core foundational value, and then everything else kind of stems from that. You hire for it, you fire for it, and you reward around it, and you don't. Yeah, wow, that's fantastic, man. That's the first time I've heard somebody kind of utilize that as like the foundational core value that everything else is stemmed from.
Yeah, it was quite a eureka. And I just like, and now what do I do? I've built it for 16 years and I've just taken anybody I can get who's skilled. And so you've got some brilliant jerks who really cause problems, whether they're in the leadership, whether they're, and so it took 4 or 5 years to really take our scores on our surveys to where that's now our highest score, that the people really feel like their leaders are humble, that their teams are truly psychologically safe, as Google kind of defines it, that they found to be the optimal team structure, that everyone has a voice, everyone's listened to, it's a safe place to share doubts, concerns, problems.
Yeah. No, I love that. And one of the last things we were kind of talking about is you were talking about that you weren't willing to take, exit driven money that requires you to sell out to the highest bidder type thing. Tell us more about that and how that's been pivotal to your success.
Wow, I don't know, pivotal to the success part, but
Okay.
yeah, it's tough. It's so tough to find money that isn't driven towards selling your people to the highest bidder. So yes, I could go have my own island, but then all of my people are stuck with whoever that is.
Right.
If you take that exit driven money, they insist on you taking, if not the highest bidder, pretty darn close. And I have seen enough cultures that that is not how you should treat people that helped you get that island, helped you get there, that helped you succeed. And they paid a great price, and their salary is only part of that compensation, and you owe them more than that. So we've refused to do that, but our competitors have taken that kind of money, and so they're raising 50 to 200 million, and those are across the board the kind of money that I'm competing with. And it's just not as celebrated. When kids come out of business school, it's, hey, I'm going to go raise this money and I'm going to go get this big exit, and if I can do 2 or 3, then I am the hero of this industry. That should be lauded and celebrated. Like, man, where's the celebration around building a great company that endures to Simon Sinek's infinite game, that just keeps on going and creates this place where people are first? And it is so hard to find that kind of money. And and so the innovator's dilemma is what helped us, and just help other people get what they want and you'll get what you want, to Zig Ziglar's kind of mantra. And that's what we've done, but it takes longer. It's harder, but you get longer lasting, strong partnerships with the big companies in the world, because they know you're not going to sell to their competitor or to some random company that could change the direction. So it facilitates better partnering. It facilitates more loyalty with your people. We created an ESOP, so they're all owners.
Okay.
But there's no exit, where at least the people who came later are hosed and stuck in this company with this caustic culture.
Gotcha. Okay, so you guys are an ESOP.
Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. Very cool. We could do a whole nother show on that. That's
yeah. But I think that model in general perpetuates that the founders can share out their shares, but then that culture can perpetuate with like-minded leadership.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. You definitely took the road most untraveled, right? I mean, the popular way is to sell to private equity or investors that are going to come in, and you're right. You end up having influence where you didn't have it before. You end up, culture sometimes can take a real shock because you're forced to do things that you really don't want to do. So yeah, that's fantastic. So one of the things I always ask CEOs on the show is if you were going to hire a CEO to take the reins for your company, what's the one book that you'd require he or she read before taking over for you? And what's your biggest takeaway from that book?
My dad had on his bookshelf the How to Win Friends and Influence People my whole life. And I never read it as a kid. I thought that's the stupidest title. Win friends, really? What kind of loser has to go out there and try to win?
Has to go win their friends. Exactly. Right.
Yeah. And then a friend suggested it to me after college, and the most profound and obviously lifetime, perpetuating principles that just haven't ever changed about how to truly influence in a positive and constructive way where people are first and you're just not trying to get what you want.
Yeah.
And interesting, I hadn't thought about this, but my son, when we found his journal after he died, in his journal, he had written the concluding bullets from each of those chapters over and over and over again and had memorized them. And so all the letters we got from the kids in his class of how he lifted and built their lives was just mind-blowing. My parents would have found out I was far worse of a kid than I was, what they thought. And we found out how much more he had given back and lifted others. But anyway, that book in general is just the handbook for helping people get there with you. And some of the key principle to help them want it more than you do. So how can I help this engineer to want to make that baby prettier? Well, I can make them owners. That's one. I could give them profit sharing. I could build upon his belief in himself that, hey, I think you can do better than that. What else can you think of? Come back in a couple of days and let's make this even better and make even more of an impact in the world. And let's tie that into the philanthropic. And so we go to Guatemala and help with Guatemala and Africa on some things. And so if that's what drives them, part of that baby that you made pretty is now helping in Guatemala, and you can bring your teenagers down and let's go and lift a region out of poverty. And so that's the kind of things that this book will guide you to, instead of do it by this date or else you're gone, or your performance is going to be tarnished and we are going to anyway. So it's a lot of that negative. So it's just profound. It should be, I need to review it every year. It's that good, right? And it should guide me more than it does.
I know one of my biggest takeaways is that nothing is sweeter to the sound, nothing is sweeter to someone than the sound of their own name, Mel. So, but and it amazed me. Dale was talking about how he was at a ball or something like that, and he was having a conversation with a gal, right? And he didn't, it was a conversation for an hour, and he didn't say one word. And then she got up and walked away and went to someone else and said, because all he did is peel the onion, right? And ask questions, barely. And she said, he was the best conversationalist I've ever had in my life. And he didn't say anything. He just kind of kept peeling onions. So I thought that really hit me too, going into my professional career in sales and business and really in everything. And like you said, how to really help people. It's not trying to impose your will, it's understanding. Seek to understand first and then to be understood, right? So awesome. Well, Mel, it was fantastic having you on the show, man. So many great takeaways. A couple of things that I got from it is how we really perceive challenges in life can really dictate so many things. So it can dictate your emotions, your thoughts, where you go forward, and how the kind of the law of duality almost. I talked about your culture, how you really focused on making it a place where people want to work, even if they were millionaires. I think that's genius. And I'm sure there's so much more that you've done in building your culture. But one of the things that really stuck with me from today is that culture of humility. And that's the foundational core value that drives everything else, creating a safe place. You hire for it, fire for it, and don't accept it when they don't have it. And then you don't hire for skill. Right. I mean, so many people make the mistake of doing that. And it sounds like you did for a while, you turned it around. And then the other, the last kind of big thing is that, hey, you don't have to do the private equity thing. You don't have to do the sell out to investors. I shouldn't say sell out, but, bringing in investors that are going to drive you for an exit. So, man, very powerful session. Thanks so much for being here. Let me ask you, Mel, if there was one takeaway that you would really want the audience to absorb, what would that be?
For me, and Richard Branson's talked about it, Simon Sinek, but this order of your priorities, is it the shareholders, is it the customers, or is it your people? And I would just say, bet on your people, put them first. They will take care of the customers and the shareholders. It takes a little longer. The world is not orchestrated to allow you to do that, but it will pay off. And so I think just in your decision making, put them first. That'll guide you in your funding, that'll guide you in your culture and your strategy, and it will win because they are the fuel. They are what makes it happen.
Yeah, that's profound. That's totally profound, and it makes sense. They are the backbone of everything. If they're happy, they're going to give amazing customer service to your clients, and if you make them their consideration first, that will guide you on making the decision for funding and all these other strategic, partnerships or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, awesome, Mel. Again, thanks for so much for being on the show. For our listeners out there, please hit like and subscribe and help us spread the word about the show and what we're doing here. Again, thank you again. And we'll have to have you on in the near future again as you continue to grow the company.
Would love to. Thanks for the honor. Thrilled to be a part of your show.
Awesome. With that, this is Patrick Rogers, and we'll see you on the next episode.